reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent, that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution, lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we plumb the depths of video games, specifically of the role-playing variety, hence the name. My name is Jeff Rude. I am the host and the flesh for fantasy of this operation. Joining me, as always, on this show, we have the White Wedding. It is Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
You know, I'm starting to feel like the human belly button should be considered a pocket dimension because you can put stuff there and you never know when it's going to come back to you.
Also joining us, as always, the Adam and Chains of this operation. It is Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello, Braden.
Hello. My parents have a hot tub now, and I still haven't gone in it because instead I'm staying here recording this podcast.
So we got to get this done so you can get in that.
No.
No?
I will not compromise the quality of my art.
Yeah, I guess, you know, as the resident expert of dubious RPGs, right?
Yeah. So, what are we doing today, Jeff?
Well, if you couldn't tell by the names of hit singles from the recording artist Billy Idol, who my mom had a big dirty crush on in college, that could only mean one thing. We're talking about Germany, specifically Piranha Bytes. I'll note that Billy Idol's not German. They just seem to like him there historically. Particularly in his late period. His stuff kind of charts there way later than it should.
Is the David Hasselhoff thing actually real? I was always confused about if that was just like some sort of myth or David Hasselhoff was actually popular.
Yeah.
David Hasselhoff actually was like a fairly big deal there for reasons inexplicable.
Didn't he like perform on top of the Berlin Wall while it was being demolished? Is the thing that a lot of people talk about?
No idea.
You know, get paid. That's what I
Write
say.
in, kids and people that are listening to this podcast, to correct our historical inaccuracies.
I owned a copy of World in Conflict, the hit RTS game, when it came out in 2007. That came in a nice paperboard case with a genuine certified little piece of the Berlin Wall in it. And that was by far the coolest physical video game thing I think I've ever had, up to the point where I got a hard copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga. Then again, Pebble Beach Golf is pretty cool. Yeah, so we are doing a Patreon request. Yay!
Yay!
Piranha Bytes. This is one of Braden's deviant friends, I believe, that recommended Piranha Bytes.
Yes, this is my friend Fanta. He's from Austria, which is like Germany, but
Catholic.
East, the Österreich.
But neutral.
Yes. You like Mozart Kugel? I like Mozart Kugel.
I like those little Mozart candies. I think they're not from Austria. I think they're from like Lübeck or something, but they're like a little ball. And it's like hard, dark chocolate wrapped around almond marzipan and some like pistachio marzipan in there. Awesome. Love
Mozartkugel is great. It's the one thing I remember about Austria.
I envy you knowing anything about Austria because I've not been.
We also as a 13-year-old boy, I was also forced to go on the extremely tourist trappy Sound of Music tour that they have in Salzburg.
You were all Von trapped out. Sorry, there's a cat in this room who is dying. So talk amongst yourselves.
So I did not realize until much later what schnitzel was and how Germans and Austrians don't like the fact that in the Sound of Music, the lyrics are noodles. Schnitzels with noodles. It's like, no. At best, we serve schnitzel with like potatoes, au gratin.
Yeah, well, guess what? Are you going to doubt Roger and Hammerstein?
No.
Are you going to doubt the songwriting acumen of the people responsible for Imperialism, the musical, also known as The King and I?
Yeah.
Were they 7 Brides for 7 Brothers?
Oh, man.
Maybe.
7 Brides for 7 Brothers. Let's go. Tell me, like...
Bless your beautiful heart wherever you may go. Something. Gaslighting women.
Gaslighting women? What the fuck?
Listen, it's literally a musical about kidnapping women until they like you.
So you can have babies, which is...
Hey,
man, everything about that musical is a fascinating sociological study of the culture that sired it. Love it. Hate it, too. We're going to talk about Piranha Bytes, specifically 3 games, I suppose, in particular, but this is kind of an overarching show. And we're going to dig in pretty soon. But before that, I must say, if you would like to be a part of discussions about Piranha Bytes, like if you hear everything that we're about to tell you and you're like, that's up my alley, well, we've got a community of sickos who you might be able to get along with, chill with, hang with. But how would you go about doing that? Well, it's very easy, my friend. You go to patreon.com/deeplistens and you drop in $1 and that gets you onto a Discord. And for but a lovely $3, you can drop a game to us, an RPG of your choosing. We will put it in the slush pile, which we pull from just every so often, and we will make a podcast for you. So if you've ever wanted 3 people who you don't know to make like 90 minutes worth of low-grade podcastium for you, we're your guys, okay? We got your hookup. Big Papa Pump's your hookup here, and I'm the pump. I love to pump. Oh. Who's into pumping here? We pumping? I mean,
Big Papa Pump, I thought was Scott Steiner and his
when I go to the
impeccable
gym,
use of math.
It is like I am coming all the time.
There you go. Like the feeling of coming. God,
it's like the feeling of coming.
I keep telling my wife I'm going to show that to her, and I don't think I've done it yet, but I've done the impression so many times that every time I'm like, oh, it's like, and she's like, yeah, the coming.
Yeah,
Marriage, right? Anyway.
Well, let me tell you about a different kind of marriage.
Yes?
A marriage between one company's output and the cultural institution of video game development for an entire country.
Please.
Piranha Bytes, which was founded in 1997. They're based in Essen. And I would say Piranha Bytes is perhaps up there with Farming Simulator and the Realms of Arcania games in consternation for the most Germanic of video games. And I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the game I picked. To put it in perspective, Piranha Bytes has been around they've been making games for literally 22 years. Gothic came out in 2001. The most recent game, Elex 2, came out in 2021. And I'm just going to give a basic description here of you play these games starring as a brown-haired Germanic-looking dude, possibly with no name, unless his name is Jax, who is just kind of a blank slate goober. You start out with virtually nothing. No skills, no combat abilities, no aptitudes whatsoever. Instead, being barely able to hold a sword or otherwise defeat emaciated wildlife, local children, random goons who will happily kick your teeth in.
Yes, they really like to make games where you start with literally nothing other than the rags on your shoulders and body, and then throwing shit at you that will kill you.
What
if
if
you're not
I
careful.
told you there were also 3 factions? Perhaps one of them is magically inclined. Perhaps one of them is a criminal element. And perhaps one of them is just a bunch of weirdos smoking weed in a swamp. Who's to say? Either way, you can spend a decent amount of time doing little fetch quests for all of these factions before choosing one that you have to join. Now, which of these games am I talking about? Am I talking about Gothic? Am I talking about Risen? Am I talking about Elex? The secret, Jeff, Chris, is I'm talking about all of them.
Yeah.
I'm talking about all of Piranha Bytes games.
Yeah, did we make a mistake, or did we
No.
make the best decision?
Somewhere in the East Coast, a grave with a headstone that says Joseph Campbell stirs, for this is truly the story of
The
a
hero with 1,000 faces, except they're all the same face.
Yes.
They're all
blunt,
brown-haired German man.
Teutonic man.
Now, real quick, I feel like, Braden, you might be the best equipped to say this. We're going to use a term repeatedly when we talk about the games that we played. We're going to use the term Eurojank. Braden, for those that are unaware, what is a Eurojank game?
I realize that this is probably the first game we have covered for the podcast that can fall under this distinction.
Draken.
Yeah, okay, Draken is definitely Eurojank. You're right.
Sure, but it's a different type of retro Eurojank. I feel like Eurojank
that
does
game
not...
is Amiga.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Eurojank, you have to get to the 3D era PC games for real Euro.
I agree. That there's a language to like microcomputer European games that is just a language that none of us grew up with.
Boy, bruv, let me tell you about sensible soccer.
Yeah, like it's a world that like they weren't made for us. I would like to temper everything I'm about to say about the game I played too with the like this wasn't made for me, especially if everything that you've said is true, which I'm pretty sure it is, which is this is a studio that just kind of makes one game, really. People keep coming back and they like this flavor of game, and if that audience is happy, then maybe they don't need to change anything, right? But having said that, I have discovered that maybe I don't want to do this.
Yeah. So, yeah, Eurojank I would describe as it is mid-budget European development. I associate it with RPG strategy games and shooters mostly, but it definitely can be applied to any genre.
So I was going to say, Braden, as someone who has seen me play copious amounts of European-style Myst clones, would my adventure games, especially like the works of Cryo, would those be considered Eurojank?
Absolutely. They are all games that reach much higher and go much further than their budget or the amount of manpower would suggest.
For me, one of, I think, the charming features of, like, real, true, dyed-in-the-wool Eurojank is the EFIGs part of it, basically. So EFIG, like, English, French, Italian, German, Spanish. So, like, these games get distributed in Europe, which is a big, polylinguistic continent, right? Generally speaking, though, I just casting a pretty wide net here, but most people across Europe, they will probably be speaking native language. And then if that native language is neither French nor English, they have English or French as a fallback. English is probably a more reliable one, though. So you wind up with games that were written in, like, the vernacular language of whatever country they were come in. I'm thinking about, Spiders comes to mind, right? These are French speakers that are writing in French. And then they generally, it feels like they do the localization in-house because they're very confident in their ability to take these ideas and put them into English, and they get it across. But it's always just a little, like, especially when it comes to the VO, like, the VO is done to a professional standard, and it is done in, like, clear, understandable English, but the content and the delivery is always just a little weird, like just off, like uncanny valley levels of, like, and it's because it's like, oh, you're speaking probably your second language, like you are probably voice talent from whatever country you are in. And they're just like, yeah, we need to do the English localization for this. And like, yeah, I can handle that. Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. And yeah, you wind up with Goldfinger.
I think another thing, Jeff, on top of that, I think that's a good thing, is Eurojank games usually are trying to tap into a previously established popular zeitgeist or direction for the genre that they're trying to emulate with like 1/16 of the budget. I guess you could say, and as Braden will add more context, Gothic is a weird little exception because there was the move towards open world CRPG game design, especially with like Daggerfall, but Gothic was, as we'll talk about later, very popular for being one of the earliest examples of a fully 3D open world game in the CRPG design. But like once we get to Risen and then even Elex, you can very much tell that they are trying to capture popular directions of various genres and themes with a considerable less smaller budget, minuscule budget in comparison to the games that they're trying to emulate.
Yes, we looked this up. And as of the year of our Lord 2021, which is when Elex 2 came out, Piranha Bytes had 33 full-time employees.
And that's the thing is, it's been basically the same amount of staff since the inception. I guess the one exception is that one of the co-founders of the company was Alex Brueggemann, and he actually left the company shortly after like Gothic 1 or 2, and he went on to like start the Settlers franchise
for
Ubisoft, and then he tragically died young, like of a prolonged illness. But yeah, they've been a close-knit group of 30 to 33 people.
Yeah.
And regardless of how much money they get to make their games, they've been the 30 to 33 people.
Yeah. Like Gothic 1 has probably less than 20 people credited for the actual game. It basically, they are a small team with big ambitions, and I think we can see that most clearly with their first and second game, Gothic and Sequel.
I guess we'll jump into it.
I think we should. Yeah.
Let's go around the table. Who played Gothic?
I played Gothic.
You even finished Gothic.
I finished Gothic.
I played
the first couple hours of Gothic 2.
I played enough of Gothic to get to when you had to pick a faction, and then I stopped because I decided to play more than the recommended amount of a different branch of Piranha Bytes games. Jeff?
I have very cursory experience with Gothic 2.
All right, take it away, Braden.
All right.
Is it safe to say that Piranha Bytes started on a high note in terms of their developmental history? Because the people who really like Gothic, every single time you streamed Gothic, there was a person who said, Gothic, I love this game. And
Yeah. Gothic 2 is unironically considered one of the best CRPGs of all time, mostly by people who are, once again, not native English speakers, perhaps. But when Gothic is, in a lot of ways, both a perfect distillation of the game they would go on to keep making, and also it's a game that makes perfect sense in 2001 when you consider that it is contemporary with Morrowind and Arx Fatalis, both of which are open-ish, very like systems-driven, decidedly clunky video games with a fairly decently sized open world. And
we feel comfortable saying that Arx Fatalis is technically within our purview, right?
Oh, we should absolutely play Arx Fatalis at some point.
Co-signed.
That game is neat. Is it great? We'll have to find out.
Anyways, so Gothic.
Prison colony. I think one of the strongest things about Gothic, and one of the things that I think maybe Risen and Elex fumble a little more, is it sets up a very small location it sets up the people in that location, and it sets up the stakes like in a very concise way. So Gothic takes place in a prison colony that is surrounded by a magic barrier. The magic barrier accidentally trapped a bunch of people in it, including the prisoners, and now the prisoners run it and mine ore in exchange for goods and services from the outside world. Or at least one of the factions does. The other faction wants to blow up the barrier using magic, and the third faction are a bunch of cultists who smoke weed in the swamp and definitely aren't worshiping some sort of ancient eldritch monster. Yeah, here's the thought. And so the first few hours of any of one of these games is just about getting your feet wet and getting them to learn who the people are and, you know, the general tenor of the world. And Gothic is very much like, you're not a hero, you're just some guy who's stuck in the prison. And so you do a lot of quests for people that involve like doing their busy work or paying them protection money.
Now, something that defines Gothic and even the first few Risen games is the way that you use skill points and then also how you deal with health management.
Yeah.
I feel like this is Piranha Bytes' thing. They
Before,
are very much from the Might and Magic style of leveling and skill point.
You got to go to a skill trainer.
Well, they eventually retired that idea, but it is a skill point based CRPG for Gothic 1, Gothic 2, and then at the very least Risen 1.
Yeah. So I these games are open world, but they are open world with an asterisk, right? In the same way that like Morrowind, if you start trying to go towards the other end of the island, you're probably going to get worked. That's kind of true in every Piranha Bytes game, but even Gothic 1, you basically shouldn't leave the old camp until you have at least a little bit of stats and equipment, because if you step 3 feet off the road in any given direction, you're probably going to get murdered by like a bee or a wolf. And so it's this interesting back and forth of the power curve is such that you can basically chip away at the environment and, you know, slowly gain more power, gain more experience. But, you know, you have to be wary, because the more you chip away, the more stuff that can fuck you up also shows up.
So there are some base skills like using crossbows, two-handed weapons, one-handed weapons, but there are also several skills that only have one level, like sneaking, acrobatics, and lockpicking. These are things that lead to different play styles, but are almost as critical as the base combat stats, whether you want to go in a ranged or magical based, or even just a DPS sword and board play style. The thing that took me by surprise is like something as fundamental as being able to pick a lock, or being able to like sneak and steal stuff or pickpocket stuff. Whereas like even in the Elder Scrolls games, you just do it, or like other CRPGs of the time that Gothic and Risen came out, they literally just allow you to do things experientially. Gothic says, nah, son, you got to learn that skill.
You need at least 10 skill points, and you got to pay a guy like 50 ore, which is the currency of the realm. Because that's what everyone uses in the prison to pay a guy to teach you how to lockpick.
And obviously, I feel like like I said, I played significantly less than Braden, but the thing about Gothic is I feel like even when compared to Risen, the sense of progression in Gothic I actually felt was more satisfying. It's, as Braden already suggested, it's shockingly linear, because there is a path that the game wants you to follow, and as long as you don't deviate too significantly from that path, I feel like Gothic is pretty doable for a game from 2000 from a studio of 30 people.
the other part of these games, the other core attribute of these games, aside from starting you with nothing and kicking your teeth in, is the potential for cheese and the potential for going places you're not supposed to get items you're not supposed to have.
Well,
And-
Braden, at some point you need to talk about how you actually beat Gothic.
Yeah. But I played this game to completion, which is more than I was expecting.
About how long did that take?
21 hours.
That's pretty svelte.
Gothic is a breezy game if you know what you're doing.
Yes.
Like, that is off the dome, shorter than Morrowind.
Yeah, it is not a huge open world. I think there's a lot of, to use a fun word, verisimilitude in the way Gothic is set up. In the way, like, characters will have routines, and they will go to bed at night, and you can steal all of their shit in the middle of the night because they're asleep. That I really appreciate. However, a lot of the game is running back and forth between the three camps, and you do eventually get teleport spells that you should invest in, even if you aren't going to be a wizard. So you do eventually get fast travel, but the colony itself is, I think, it's definitely smaller than Vvardenfell. I think it might be. I don't think it's as big as Arx Fatalis's areas either. But it does a thing that I really appreciate, which is when it sets up the factions and it sets all up the situation, it is not afraid of upsetting that situation. So there's the old camp, who are basically run like a mafia racket, who are the ones who are still mining ore for the kingdom outside. They are you pay protection money. You have their ore barons at the top who basically live very well for themselves. There's the new camp, who are a combination of like anarchist criminal types who don't want to deal with rules, and also water mages and their mercenary bodyguards who want to blow up the barrier by getting as much ore as possible. And then there's the swamp camp, who are trying to awaken the sleeper. And as we all know, whenever a video game or any other piece of fiction has a creature named the sleeper, that creature is trustworthy and definitely not a horrible monster. But then midway through the game, after you have picked a faction, and I went with the old camp, the state of the world will actually change. And the old camp's mine collapses. And then because my main character was running around doing quests for everyone, he gets branded a traitor by the old camp. And so you have to join one of the other factions if you were a member of the old camp. And the characters will respond to that, and NPCs will talk about that. And because there isn't a huge cast of NPCs, they can do that.
About how many NPC agents would you say? Like, just, that's the thing, is like
named NPCs?
Yeah, like guesstimation.
I'd say I'm going to say 40.
Yeah, that's manageable. Again, like contemporary frame of reference being something like Morrowind, which is when you really sit and like ponder it, the clockwork part of that game is impressive. And then you look at like how much of that village is like fogged out. And it's like, oh, there are towns on this island that are just basically 3 houses, like 3 separate buildings with 1 person each in them, and then a store. Like, there's not a lot of agents, right? Like, walking around. And it's manageable. You can have some like friction in that way, just based on relationships between NPCs. It's neat.
Yeah, and because
that sounds neat.
Yeah, and because it's prison, everyone's kind of a piece of shit.
Would you say that that's also like a Eurojank flavor thing too? Like, there's like a little, like
I don't think it's
like there's a roughness, right? Like,
yeah,
like all these settings have some like some sort of like maybe unnecessarily like brutalist component to them.
I think that's not necessarily purely Eurojank, but it's definitely part of it.
I mean,
it's like, look at the fucking Witcher games, right?
Yeah, which calling those like
Witcher 1 is Eurojank for sure.
I guess that one's fair.
Witcher 2 has a budget.
It's like the king of Eurojank.
The glow up from what, and then I feel like Cyberpunk is maybe the closest thing you will ever get to AAA Eurojank.
Yeah.
Stalker.
All I will
Eurojank.
say, yes, Stalker 1 is absolutely Eurojank.
Stalker is king champion of Eurojank.
I feel like, Eurojank is not necessarily a bad game. It's just a game that's working as well within their means as possible. And, pie in the sky aspirations.
Yeah.
You can't fault Piranha Bytes for not trying, although I would say when we get to Elex and Elex 2, they kind of phoned it in. But they really, 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 really tried. So they follow up Gothic, which, say what you will about Gothic from a technical problem, and even like mechanical issues therein. This is where things kind of get slightly interesting with Piranha Bytes. So they start work on Gothic 2, and this is when their distributor, Pheno Media, got caught doing
some sort of
fraudulent.
crime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got caught doing some sort of fraud that resulted in their insolvency. So Piranha Bytes started
Bought
work on
themselves
Gothic.
out.
They bought the rights to Gothic. Piranha Bytes starts work on Gothic 2 within a year of the release of Gothic. Like they were.
Yeah. Gothic 2 is definitely running on the same engine tech as Gothic 1. Like it literally uses the same.
This is something we need to talk about with
same
Piranha
fan
Bytes.
patch.
Piranha Bytes likes to use their own assets over and over again.
They sure do.
I feel like even from Gothic to Risen, I felt like I saw the same herbs and plant life and flora and fauna over and over again that you could pick and interact with in the open world. Yeah, they use Asset generation is really difficult.
Yes. And Gothic 2 is generally considered a improvement over the first game. I only played the first couple hours, so I can't speak to it myself. But that game and its expansion, Night of the Raven, where they made the game harder because the fans wanted it to be harder, I seem like they are probably the high point for the developer. And then there's Gothic 3, which I played a little bit of for a charity stream a while back.
So
and Gothic 3 came out in 2006, so it is contemporaneous with Oblivion and Two Worlds. Let that sink in.
They got it twice,
Yeah.
Gothic 1 made it was maybe even a quadruple whammy. The first one being relatively small distribution in Europe originally, so didn't show up here till kind of after the big wave. Also had to run against Arx Fatalis, as you mentioned, also Arcanum, and also Morrowind, which, when it came to sweeps week and review season and
Morrowind was a big fucking deal for PC game types of the time.
And we've mentioned it before, but the Xbox release of Morrowind, super goddamn important.
But yeah, all not to belittle Gothic, but that is to say, imagine that happening to you twice, though.
Yeah, Gothic 3 also was basically released way too early because Piranha Bytes publisher Joe Wood was in terrible financial states and forced them to release the game before it was ready, which is why Gothic 3 has this reputation of being the bad one because it launched unfinished and was very buggy. And the tension between Piranha Bytes and Joe Wood led to a falling out. I think if you were to play it now, Gothic 3 would be totally fine. The version on GOG literally comes with the fan patch pre-installed. So it's a Vampire the Masquerade situation there. But after they broke with Joe Wood, they didn't have the IP.
Oh.
And so Joe Wood outsourced an expansion to Gothic 3 called Forsaken Gods or Forgotten Gods to a game studio based in India, whose name I don't remember off the top of my head. and that thing is apparently a real piece of trash. And then
the name of this developer is listed as Trine Games.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the Trine Games.
Yes. And then after that, as like kind of a dying last gasp, they made a game they outsourced a game to a different German studio called Spellbound Studios, who have made a decent number of, moderately well received PC games of the 90s, to make a game called Arcania Gothic 4. And I've played the first couple hours of that game too, because I'm a sick man. And that game lacks any of the charms or basic mechanical appeal of these Piranha Bytes games. And also, like, weirdly enough, spends a lot of time being like, oh, the main character from Gothic 1 through 3 turned evil and now you got to kill him. It's like, I wonder why they would
here.
Yeah, I wonder what you're getting at. But generally speaking, those two games are not considered canon by fans.
And
but
did Arcania get a sequel?
No, it's an expansion.
No.
Okay.
It's the title
Flames
is
of
literally
Seraph
Arcania: Gothic 4.
Yeah.
The weird end note to this, if Joe Wood sounds familiar to you, you probably know them for two other game franchises. They were the people behind Spellforce, and they were also the people behind Painkiller.
And all of these are now under the THQ Nordic.
Well, this is the funny end
umbrella.
note, is that Joe Wood got purchased by Nordic Games, later THQ Nordic, in 2011, and Piranha Bytes got purchased by THQ Nordic 10 years later. So they're all back to being a family again.
So yeah, they have access to the Gothic IP again. Who knows if they will have anything to do with it? Before I forget, don't forget that they are in theory remaking Gothic 1.
Right.
Oh.
They put out that teaser, like a playable teaser of Gothic 1 that was received very poorly because it tries to be like a modern video game.
Yeah, people
and
like
maybe misses the tone a little bit.
Yeah. Anyways, so anything we want to say about Gothic? Braden, what is your advice if someone is interested, if they are Gothic curious?
Gothic is, if you can wrap your head around that game's bizarre keyboard only control scheme.
Right. That is something we need to talk about. Can we talk about Gothic's keyboard only control scheme?
It's a bizarre keyboard only control scheme whereupon you use the arrow keys to move, and the control key is kind of your universal action button.
A lot of the special attacks and special abilities, especially the magic system and use of items, relies on hotkeys, as if this is Diablo.
Yeah, it's fine. It's bizarre, but it's surprisingly usable. It's not like System Shock 1 or anything.
Yeah, the System Shock 1 internet thing's also that System Shock remake kind of good. I think that the only thing I would say is getting Gothic 1 and Gothic 2 to work on modern technology is a bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, you gotta download the system pack, and you gotta download they're like a lot of PC games from the turn of the century. You gotta put in a little bit of work to make them run at resolutions you want them to run at frame rates you want them to run at, with the bugs you don't want them to have.
And like, full props to the people that maintain sites like PC Gaming Wiki that will pretty well walk you through what you need to get these games up running.
Oh, the PC Gaming Wiki page for Gothic 1 is a riot.
It is, yes. The thing I ran into is that there are multiple competing forks of the system pack now, because of course there are. And one of them was not working for me, so I had to install the other one. In true fan mod fashion.
There's two dominant packs. One is known as Union System Pack 2.0, and the other is
Spinal.
Yeah, Spinal or Gothic 1 Community Patch.
Yeah.
I don't know which one. Which one worked for you?
I used Union.
Okay.
And Union also works for Gothic 2.
Okay. So just keep that in mind if you're Gothic curious.
Yes, if you're goth curious.
But yeah,
after that, they basically made they made another game using the Gothic 3 engine. That more or less, I would say Risen is more or less Gothic 4, the real Gothic 4. But it's set in a semi-Mediterranean island. And so why don't you tell me about the Risen games?
Let's go down around the table. Who played Risen?
You played Risen.
Braden,
I
have
played
you played
a little
Risen?
bit of Risen.
I played 10 hours of Risen, and wowzers. Well, okay, let's be positive first. First off, I think that Risen is very clearly a game that can only exist in the post-Oblivion era of 360 and PS3 CRPG game design. It's a pseudo-open world. I actually think, Braden, correct me if I'm wrong, Risen feels smaller than Gothic in a lot of ways because it's all contained within this island. The story premise is basically that you are a nameless character that's a stowaway on a ship, and basically you wash up shore with you and one other companion, and you are presented on this island that is basically in the process of unleashing some sort of contained or secret magical power, very similar to Gothic 1. There is a subterranean evil that's in some sort of temple that it was sealed into hundreds of years ago. When you enter the island, and this is the thing that drove me absolutely crazy, you discover that there are 3 factions, basically all with their own perspectives. There are the bandits, run by Don Esteban. There is the Warriors of the Order, which are basically this totalitarian state, and then there are the mages. Regardless, there are 2 locations for you to go to. The first being the swamp where the bandits exist, where you basically repeatedly commit war crimes. We'll talk about that later. And then when you go to the other city, which is Harbortown, you discover that basically the Warriors of the Order are running a totalitarian state where once you enter the city, you cannot leave. And the people who are forced to live under these circumstances are suffering as a result.
They are caught between the remnants of the criminal syndicate and the Inquisition Knights.
Now, a couple of things. Risen has maybe, when you consider the time that it came out, Risen really was Piranha Bytes shooting for the stars. It had higher production values.
It had Hollywood talent in it.
It has Hollywood voice acting talent. It really had a significant marketing budget because this is kind of that Two Worlds era where after Oblivion, it's like, we're the next Morrowind killer. Yeah, we're the one that's going to beat Oblivion. And I remember just going to Best Buy and Fry's Electronics, rest in peace, Fry's, and just seeing copies of Risen everywhere. This game did well for them, in part because of that. And I think I like this game significantly less than Gothic. I think the first problem that I had with this game is that it felt, and Braden, feel free to chime in. It's longer and slower.
How long Gothic to beat from this game is 40 hours.
40 hours. And what is the biggest problem for me with Risen is the fact that in trying to emulate the CRPG grittiness that they even at the time were saying, yeah, we're taking inspirations from Oblivion, but we're not boiling out the grit and the hard work that CRPGs are supposed to value. You literally spend the first 2 to 3 hours wearing nothing but rags and holding a wooden shield with a dinky ass sword and just getting your ass kicked by regular ass fauna. I don't know how many times I was absolutely myrtleized by like boars and wild pigs. And there's really not a lot you can do unless you're capable of progressing the story. And that is compounded by the fact that the game starts you significantly far away from the first real city. Like I said, you wash up on the shores. So all of these people that you're supposed to spend your skill points on are at least 1 hour removed from where you start.
Like,
and
just
so you're
walking across the contiguous world map, like a
Yeah.
real-time hour.
Well, because there's mini quests and that type of stuff.
Okay.
If you really do this, and I would caution this because I actually sequence broke the entire game within the first 30 minutes because, like I said, you start with a female companion who washes up on shore with you. I did not notice her, and I just moved forward to the town that I saw the sign pointing towards, and I started triggering quest lines and quests, and it's like, mission complete, and I didn't initiate the chapter 1 title card because I never talked to that woman that was washed up on shore with me. So the scripting for the game was completely busted.
Yeah, like you broke some flag somewhere.
I broke a flag. No, not only that, Jeff, but like it was spawning enemies in their incorrect spots because it didn't know what chapter I was on.
Oh my god. And this is like not as we've mentioned, not really like a level scaled world. So
no,
like
so
an inappropriate.
It's got bad shit areas and it's got good shit areas. What I thought was really weird is, and this is something that is kind of indicative of the Risen games, is once you enter a town, you could spend hours doing menial like fetch quests, like pick up from point A, deliver to point B, and there's no combat. You're just delivering stuff. You're an errand boy. And what was really weird to me is like some of these quests, for example, I met a blacksmith in Risen 1. He's like, nah, my leading blacksmith is really tired and he needs a lunch break. Go find my 2 assistants and help him. And it's like 2 feet away from the quest giver, the 2 people. And you just say, hey, he needs a lunch break. It's like, okay, mission complete. That's it. You just had to talk to 2 NPCs and then you're done. This is also of the era of CRPG design, and I really screwed myself here, where you really want to be careful about what you sell. They fixed this in Risen 2, but there's a quest where you meet an ogre, and he's like, I want fried meat. And I realized, oh shit, I ate all of my fried meat, and I can't leave the town because the Inquisition won't let me leave, so I can't do this quest. I can't give you food. I ate all of it. And then there's another person where he's like, I need 5 silver tankards. It's like, oh, I thought that was loot trash. I sold all of mine. And now they're being sold back to me for like 7 times the price.
It's a miserable thing that happens in a game because as soon as it happens the first time, it's like it's very immersion breaking for me. Because suddenly I'm just very concerned.
Because now you never sell anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just gonna have 100 of everything forever because you never know.
The weird thing about Risen, and they later synthesized this, is Risen's combat it's a much more of an action RPG, but the Risen franchise could be best described as an action RPG where the combat feels like a rhythm game, where you need to notice the attacking animations and then either counter with a parry, which is right mouse click to block, but if you just tap mouse click, right mouse click, then you initiate your parry animation. You have to kind of time it just right. And you either immediately defeat the enemies by like poking the shit out of them in the right times where they're like powering up their powered up moves or something like that, or you're just getting your ass kicked. And if you don't figure out the timing to any enemy in any of the Risen games, then you just die.
I think a shared trait between all of these games is the combat's not very good in any of them.
Well,
they try things. Like, yeah, Risen 1 has like a focus on parrying. It doesn't want you to mash attack.
Which makes Risen 2 and 3 all the weirder because they were immediately like, oh wait, people actually like mashy mash, and then they completely changed the genre of the game. We'll get to that later. But yeah, the weird thing to note about Risen 1, at the very least, is that they continue that skill-based leveling system wherein you're taking your experience points and you're finding trainers to unlock new abilities. They changed this significantly with Risen 2. What is odd is, unlike Gothic, is you start with swords and maybe a shield if you can find it, but learning rune magic is not something that you immediately have access to. and you have to initiate a mainline quest line to learn how to be a mage.
That is also true in
But
Gothic.
in Risen, because the game is longer, it could be like 4 or 5 hours before you unlock this key mechanic in Risen. Whereas I feel like in Gothic, it pops off far quicker. Risen is just slower. It's just a slower game because it's trying to do so much more. I did not hate the lore here in Risen. I thought that the story was kind of interesting because you're presented with, I think the one problem that I have with Risen 1 is that it is a high fantasy theme wherein it feels very informed by Oblivion, which Oblivion came out in 2006 and Risen came out in 2009. And so it has a lot of the traditional fantasy trappings. And it has a lot of that stuff that was in Gothic in terms of its overworld game design. But there's kind of like this myth of like, oh, there's an evil that's emerging from the ground and we got to figure it out. And oh, if you want to be a bastard and a terrible person, you can side with the bandits where you're actually committing war crimes and like pillaging villages. The problem is that while it presents this choice at the start of the game, regardless of your choices, you are eventually funneled down this mainline quest line with Mendoza where you're trying to figure out what this temple stuff is all about. And basically all of those factions in Risen 1 fall to the wayside for you to learn more about these titans, these undead priests.
That's also a shared trait between all these games is your faction choice does matter in as much as like but only up to a point because the main quest is still going to be the main quest.
Yeah. I would say that Risen 1, it's really interesting to see Piranha Bytes play around with a pretty significant budget. It is also important to note that Risen 1, like I said, was financially successful. And it's been ported and remastered repeatedly.
It's
like
on the Switch.
It's on the Switch, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. And if you bought, like me, you bought the original Steam release, they actually updated the game to where it's now the Switch and Xbox One version.
64-bit Windows.
Yeah. Huh. So it is a well-maintained release. If you want to give it a try, it has a lot of the Piranha Bytes. This is before Piranha Bytes really started to kind of move away from old school CRPG design. Like, there are a lot of weapons where it's like, cool, I found this cool bow. Oh, wait, I don't have enough dexterity to use it.
Yeah, no. You need to min-max if you want to use that bow.
And yeah, that's the other thing with Risen 1 is much like Gothic. You are either going to use swords, you are either going to be a mage, or you're going to use bows and arrows. And if you try to do all three of them, you done fucked up. You done fucked up. There are a lot of people who really like Risen. There are a lot of people who like
Risen. I did not hate my time with Risen.
I got perilously close to picking this up. It was funny because I bought, spoilers, the copy of the game I was going to buy, a hard copy, because the digital price is relatively high. And then in the course of getting ready for the show, they dropped the digital price of Risen on the Xbox to, I think, $5 for the first two games. And I just about pulled the trigger, and then I thought I could spend that money on dog food instead. So
now that you've mentioned it, my least favorite part of any Piranha Bytes game, especially their old school CRPGs, is when you're trying to fight more than one enemy target. Because if you're being attacked by, let's say, 3 goons, even if they're like easy to kill goblins, you get surrounded, and there's a weird auto-aim feature to every Piranha Bytes game where it will snap you to face one enemy target, and you can attack them and block their attacks. But if you get attacked from behind or to your side, that attack cannot be blocked unless you're facing correctly to it. And the lack of you having player agency to change your position in terms of who you are guarding makes attacking groups of enemies incredibly frustrating unless you've reached the point where you have a companion next to you or something like that. Or you've learned how to do the AoE spells, or you have rune magic, so you can just pop these tomes of knowledge that unlock like these cool dropping rains of fire from the sky abilities. But one of the most frustrating things that I constantly butted up against, even in Gothic 1, was like, oh, I'm being attacked by a horde. I guess I'm going to try and kite them through a narrow passageway so as that I can just fight them one at a time.
Yes.
But I will say this, as the person who played all of the Risen games, Risen 1 is at least interesting. Risen 2...
Yeah.
Braden, didn't you play Risen 2 for the Wheel of Dubious RPGs?
No, I played a little bit of Risen 2 when it came out, when I got it for cheap.
Risen 2 is an action RPG where they've taken out a lot of
they
old
tried
school
to
grit.
Make it approachable.
Yeah, and I don't know when this happened because it seems like Risen 2 was developed around the same time as Assassin's Creed 3. I was originally of the opinion that, Assassin's Creed 3 was informed the development of Risen 2, but it turns out that both of these games came out the same time. So they just decided to make a fantasy-themed pirate game. And two things about that. First off, we're going from old school Gothic-inspired...
Yeah. Like the first game, Risen
fantasy
definitely has like a tropical Mediterranean-ish feel to it. Risen 2 and 3 are straight up fucking Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, they even changed this. So each Risen game has a different thematic. The setting in Risen 2 is that, you're in the Caribbean tropics, you're a pirate. You can create a little pirate crew and take command of a ship. The thing with Risen 2 is that it is, like I said, much more action-y. So that kind of parry system is still there, but it's much more synthesized. And unlike Risen 1 and even the Gothic games, you are incentivized to just mash attack. It's just so much more mindless. You have guns and muskets that you can use, and as Braden can attest, while they are very powerful in Risen 2, the actual process of shooting is fucking awful.
It's some very good RPG developer
trying to do a third-person action shooter stuff.
It's over-the-shoulder aiming, but it don't control like a real third-person shooter.
No.
Are we talking like sub Mass Effect 1 here?
Yes.
Oh man, it's not just sub Mass
What
Effect.
if Mass Effect 1, but you are literally using a blunderbuss?
Yeah,
You're literally using flintlock
with
firearms.
reload.
Yeah, good real verisimilitude. That's the one spot we needed. It is
so the interesting thing, or the big reform that they made with Risen 2, is that now you can just put your skill points freely. You don't need to find trainers. You can actually, your core attributes, whether it's blades, which are your swords and stuff like that, firearms, toughness, cunning, which is your stealth-based abilities, including sneaking and thievery, and then the magic is called voodoo. Talk a little bit about that. However, the perks to each of those abilities, like you start out being able to use pistols and rifles, but if you want to use crossbows, if you want to use special guns, you have to learn those skills on top of that. For example, with cunning, you can definitely sneak around, but the ability to pick locks and the ability to pickpocket are things you need to learn from skill trainers. So you can certainly up your stats, but the good meaty stuff that you get from leveling up characters, you still have to kind of find those quest givers and to learn those abilities, which is a weird compromise. Like, it's a middle ground there. It's like go one way or the other was my personal opinion. Or honestly, if you're going to go the action role-playing game route, just do a tech tree. Just do a tech tree.
Yeah, this is also the game. 2 and 3 are also the games where they focus more heavily on AI companions.
Right.
You get Patty.
You get Patty, who Patty
will
transforms.
Fucking carry you.
Yes. And the funny thing about Risen 2 is your companions, even if they do a majority of the work, you still get all of the credit and all of the EXP. They changed that in Risen 3, where you need to do a majority or at least a nominal amount of damage to the enemies. Otherwise, your companions will get classified as the recipient of that kill, and you won't actually get the glory or the EXP on that. You still have the weird hotkey stuff. Instead of needing to micromanage a bunch of herbs and different meats and food recipes, everything that is food is classified as a provision, which I actually liked. It led to less fiddly inventory management. it's just very mindless. And this is the part where we need to say, so Braden, Risen 2's got some technical problems.
We need to make a clip of that moment from your stream.
Yeah.
So
describe
draw
this
distance.
So there's a draw distance issue. I believe, did they use Unreal, or they used something known as Genome with Natural Motions Morphine, which is the Elex engine, later to be used as the Elex engine.
Spoilers.
As a result, when you are far away from foliage and tree life, they are small, and as you get closer and closer to the trees, the game detects it as it needing to process more definition to those trees, and instead it increases the size of the trees.
So yeah, it's something to do with draw distance and level of detail, and these games being made for the Xbox 360. But the end result is when you get closer to this foliage, it just gets bigger, and it's not even like popping or anything. It's very funny.
It's one of the weirdest graphical things I think I've ever seen my entire life.
I've got a fun graphical thing I'm going to be talking about when we get to
but I don't think I liked Risen 2 as much as I liked Risen 1. I think this is a weird thing for me to say, but the weird grittiness to Risen kind of made it more fun. And I feel weird about that because I feel like the story is more coherent, that the characterization they cared about, and also they really do funnel you down multiple factions. It should be noted that there is a correct choice to this because the Inquisition are actual slavers, and the first mission they give you, which is a requirement in the game because it's like the tutorial mission, involves you tracking down runaway slaves and then decapitating them and presenting the heads back to the slave owner.
And also these escaped native slaves are maybe some of the most questionable Ooga Booga tribesmen you've ever seen in a video game.
Eek.
Like some real like, oh right, this game was made in northwestern Germany.
They're not even it doesn't even make sense because we're in the Caribbean and they look like traditional tribal cultures from sub-Saharan Western Africa. And then they weren't voodoo.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird thing.
Yes.
I'm trying to find a good clip of the tree stuff.
But charitably we're talking about like peoples brought over during the slave trade from that area to that area, which is not a thing I really want to go explore, and really not a thing I want to go reinforce.
No, it's a weird game that I feel like. Oh, I found it. I found the perfect clip. Braden, could you just introduce maybe Risen 3 or where Piranha Bytes is?
So Risen 3 Titan Lords feels like it builds off what you were saying about Risen 2 even more so. In that it's even more actiony. At this point, the open world nature of that game has been sectioned out a little more. I think that's the thing to note about both Risen 2 and 3 is that they are both a little more linear, and like the part of Gothic 1 through 3 and Risen 1 where you can pretend and like go to places you're not supposed to, that is lessened in Risen 2 and 3. But yeah, Risen 3 literally just gives you a bunch of islands and a bunch of quests in a very BioWare style sectioned off vignettes sort of thing. Also, it's still pirate themed, but now they're undead wizards who have your soul. There's a voodoo priest who looks like a dude who would sell you weed outside the rave. Who is your bro and spirit guide.
He also has a weird accent that feels completely non-historical or anything.
Also, he's a white guy, to be clear.
Yeah, he's a white guy, is the worst part of it.
Yeah, no, he's like, hey man, listen, I can hook you up with the really good stuff. I can get you the ketamine.
They're just like,
Just come outside the roller disco and hand me €5 and we can have a party.
So the weird thing about Risen
Evocative.
3 is with Risen 3, what you are seeing is you're seeing them try to move into a more Souls-like direction because it's Risen 3, the Titan Lords. So each of the locations, because there's a variety of islands that you need to explore, some of which are retreads of Risen 1, some of which are retreads of Risen 2, and the theme being that each of these islands is cursed by some sort of Titan Lord or legendary evil that you need to slay. And so each island builds up to these mini bosses and also large bosses. The problem is that Eurojank Souls-like, usually not a recipe for fun.
yes. There's a certain tightness that you need that Souls-like to have.
And so with the floaty jumps and the kludgy kind of gun combat and this very stiff melee combat system, it does not feel good at all in Risen 3. And by this point, the combat in Risen with 3 is very much button mashy. And I didn't like it. Oddly enough, it might have been the Risen game I most think I feel like I could have beat, and there's some interesting like story stuff. So basically a necromancer pops out of the ground and then eats your soul, and then you have these cursed nightmares, and as you progress certain chapters you find out that this game is actually cosmic horror themed, which is cool. It starts out as this like tropical pirate themed game, and then it becomes cosmic horror. Also, I need you to click that clip that I sent you, Jeff.
It's we put it in both the Twitch and the Skype chat. I just need you to look at that.
Technology. But no, yeah, I would say that there are some visually interesting parts of it, but
you can turn into a parrot. The
yeah,
water
you can
looks
turn
nice.
into a parrot. The water looks nice. Like technically, I feel like Piranha Bytes is figuring out how to make these beautiful open worlds that are less janky, and problem is like they're using the same combat engine, and that's weird. Like you can't have these tight combat expectations for the player if you're still running basically this kludgy, stiff combat system from like Gothic.
Well, yeah. So goes the Risen trilogy.
So it is with Risen.
And then 3 years later, for a new generation of consoles, they put out their next series of games in 2017. Elex came out.
The fuck?
Now,
did you see that?
who among us volunteered for tribute for Elex? Specifically, its much less well-received sequel.
That was me. I'm Jeff.
Oh,
I have delved into the lore of Elex 1 and am familiar with the overarching plot and events of that game. And then have put in about 10 hours. Man, I'm watching these shrubs in this Risen clip. I'm sorry.
It's fucking wild, right? It's crazy.
Amazing.
That I don't look. I've not done a whole lot of even the tamest of mind-altering substances, but if you've not taken the plunge, anyone listening, if you want to experience just a little bit of it, that's a good example.
That happens every single forest
Yeah.
you're in, every single time, Jeff.
There's a wrongness to this. Yeah. Okay, I can't look at that anymore. That is kind of upsetting. Elex. I
played a couple hours of Elex 1 just for due diligence's sake, but it sounds like you really went into the second game after I mentioned it had a Billy Idol concert.
Yes. So, as in porn and wrestling, we got to save the title bout for the end here. We got to get through the prelim stuff. So, I want to push back a little bit on a thing that you've both identified earlier when you've pointed out kind of correctly that they've been making the same game for a while. It's a bald German man who goes on a quasi-open-ish adventure with role-playing mechanics and stats that you increase very slowly, vying for the affections of 3 factions while working through like an A plot where those factions are kind of sundry to it. Elex really bucks this, okay? I want everyone at home to kind of be leaning in to the speaker, whatever they're listening to this
Brayden,
on.
I forgot to talk about the scene in Risen 2 where the characters will break. They'll animation.
Oh yeah, the animation Risen 2 and 3 is real good.
Oh my god, Jeff, I need you to see this scene also. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong clip.
Okay.
So,
but if you'll allow me,
yeah,
Allow him
talk
to
about
keep
Elex.
talking.
Talk about Elex.
Here's the thing: 4 factions.
Yeah.
4 fucking factions.
One of them is evil, and you can't join them though.
You're from them. That's your origin story.
You're from the Alps.
Okay, so the world of Magellan,
the world building,
a meteor done hit the planet, and it's full of, for the lack of a better word, bad crystals called Elex.
Tiberia.
And yeah, factions develop around how they relate to this substance. There are the Berserker faction, who are basically like, we're not going to use this stuff, which definitely changes your body morphology and gives you weird abilities. So we're not going to use this except to do magic, which is functionally they're using it, but they're like, but not really. It makes no sense at all. Then there's a group called the Outlaws, who are interested primarily in just like living life and doing crime. So if you want to buy drugs and run drugs and have powerful fuck off pistols, and you want to look like you're from Mad Max or Borderlands, Outlaws are for you. And then there's a cleric faction who are for people in Europe who like Warhammer 40k.
Yes.
Basically.
They worship technology, basically.
Yes. The first game in the Elex series, which is called Elex, involves a man named Jax, who does not have much hair, who is from a group called the Albs, a group that fractured off of the clerics, basically. So they're like, we're kind of into most of this, but we don't want to do the god stuff. Also, we're going to use these magic space drug crystals from this meteor so much that it's going to take away all of our emotions and make us a hyper-rational civilization or whatever. So that's what you're doing until you kind of get, like, screw-jobbed on a mission by the Albs and left for dead, but you come back to life. And all of the bad crystal energy that got put into you is just kind of gone. And you become, of all possible things, just a guy with a crew cut and, like, a crew shirt and a lead pipe that then runs around an open world vying for the affection of 3 different factions who they slowly give you equipment and fetch quests, and in between it's all punctuated by fighting voles and flies that kill you. It's kind of the same thing. It's really kind of just the same thing. But it's all technology and shit. Like that's I think the real edge here, which is funny because if you're like, I would rather look like a Skyrim cosplayer, you can, party with the Berserker people, I guess. But yeah, you can walk around with space armor and cool las guns, and the final boss in the first game is a very silly looking mech with a man in it talking about future prophecies. That comes into play immediately in Elex 2, which begins with a kind of lengthy little cutscene recapping the canonical ending of Elex. And you have a kid, so, I can't complain too much about this because I went into I did like the Deep Listen special and started with like entry 2 in a series, so that's not really what I'm grousing about. What I'd like to grouse about specifically is there's a kind of an extended, proper noun syndrome laden cutscene, and then you're introduced to Jack's child. Now,
Elexon.
Yes, Jack Elex, little Jaxie. There's a thing about children in video games, right? When they look wrong, they look wrong. I love that little goblin child from Horizon Zero Dawn so much. This is about on the level of the child from Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe a little worse. and is also a harbinger of the faces in this game. There are parts of Elex that look like an early Xbox 360 game in a way that is very charming. And then there are parts of it that look like, a contemporary, impressive, modern game, let's say, from 2022. It's a very strange mashup. But the opening cutscene is basically a weird space pod landing outside of your house and you getting infected in the arm. And oh my god, we're going to turn this into a Tears of the Kingdom thing. I can't do that. But I gotta say, if you want to have a miserable comparison point for this game, Nintendo put a game out a couple weeks ago that just made this one even rougher than it was going to be. So the first couple hours of this game basically are you exploring the southern part of like a fairly large map, which is relatively dense with things to look at, but not so dense with things that are interactable. You meet your wife, your ex-wife, just in kind of a dilapidated farmhouse, barn, castle. The meteor destroyed some like future Earth civilization on this planet that seemed to have, let's say, like very weird development laws. You can see a beautiful mountain range in the distance, and then like future skyscrapers, and then like shards of castles. It's a weird setting. You get pointed to a settlement called the Bastion and meet a science man in there. And it turns out that science man, well, he was the hybrid from Elex 1. He was the man inside of the robot. And he is trying to marshal together all the disparate factions of Elex, of Magellan, together to use Elex. Elex is not the place. To defeat this new invader, which he kind of prophesied at the end of Elex 1. So then you spend time, let's everyone repeat it, doing missions for the three factions in the game to slowly accumulate experience and ability points, which must be added by working with a trainer in order to use new equipment. Anyway, it's if you got rid of the serial numbers, it is kind of what they made in 2001, which is really nuts. I spent a lot of time on a very early quest in this game where I was told, hey, if you would like to earn more rep with the Berserkers, it'd be cool if you cleared out this one basically blown out meth house with 5 dudes in it. And I was like, yeah, it's an RPG. I even know what I'm getting into because I've heard you guys talk about this. And that became my Mount Everest, basically. There's a lot of walking into new settlements and meeting faction leaders who are like, you want to be a part of this faction? I was like, yeah, I suppose. Will you give me any equipment? You'll walk through houses, and you'll walk through sheds, and you'll walk through barns and prefab buildings, and they will be filled with, like, the scenery will have like a rendered sword sitting there or a shield, and none of this is stuff that you can just like pick up and use. It's like the worst abilities I think I've ever seen in a video game, because it left me for basically the first like 8 hours of this game running around with literally one like lead pipe and no armor, no equipment, which I get it, that's the thing, and I get it, you eventually find some, but it's just in the environment. It would be cool if I could just like, I should probably take that. B, that only stings even more playing a game when I'm not playing this, where it's like literally every single thing in the world is like part of some interactable system. It just made it very, very, very painful. I did eventually clear out this clearing using a technique we alluded to earlier, which is called kiting the fuck out of them. Kiting works. It's in fact the only thing that worked. Dealing with the kind of soulsy, the combat is mounted to the shoulder buttons things and taking out those 5 dudes involved me slowly but surely accumulating enough money to buy pants and then finding a sword. That did the trick. Those 5 individuals dropped an axe and a shotgun, both of which would have been of like infinite utility to defeat these bastards. And both of which were like, I'm going to say about 7 or 8 levels higher in terms of skill point deposits than I was going to be. So that's the point where I was like, okay, I think I understand this. I think I get this. I have to look into this Billy Idol thing like right now, because I was told there's a Billy Idol concert in this game.
there's radios in this game, so everyone's like, you'll walk into a settlement and there will be like Three Dog on the Fallout 3 radio being like, hey, this event's happening in this part of the world, might want to head over there. And like, the third time you walk by a radio, the man just goes like, Billy Idol's playing. It's like, what? And that's just like, hey, it's in the quest log, which is, by the way, in the most like default Windows Movie Maker looking font possible. By the way, when you die in Gothic or Risen, this is a question for both of you. What happens?
Yeah. The game just holds on you until you go into the menu and reload.
You just reload.
Here's what happens when you die in Elex. You take on the frame that you take damage that puts your health below 0. You get a new transparent layer over the screen that just says "end" in the middle of it, in white, like bold white.
So they went
center.
Full Souls-like in a lot of ways with that.
But it's one like there's not like it doesn't fade in, like it just goes "end," and then you restart it. It feels, parts of this just feel kind of graceless, in a way that kind of sucks. Like, this is a small staff game, and the budget on this is not huge, and I don't want to be a jerk. But between that and then I think some of the weird visual thing that was happening to me as I was playing this on an Xbox Series X, I don't like, you've ever seen like sci-fi or like video games, they'll do like an occultation. So there's like a single luminance source in the sky that's like the sun, right? And you can simulate like, oh look, something passed in front of the sun and there's this big shadow now that is like crossing, the earth. I thought that's what this game was doing, because I would be panning around and I would occasionally see this really bizarre set of like rectangle shaped shadows kind of moving around on the surface of the planet. And I could reliably make this happen. It's just some weird render bug, and I don't know if it's because I'm playing this on a Series X and it was an Xbox One game, or like, I don't know where the cruft is, but you could pretty easily just make these bizarre global shadows just kind of appear and flicker in and out, beyond the part where like also when you would look across the distance and then like turn the camera, you could see the game sort of like re-rendering the like distant LOD stuff as it went. It had like Unreal Engine 3 sort of vibe to it, if that makes sense. Again, don't want to be too shitty about this because I've never made a game, period, and I'm never going to make a game even remotely this big. It did seem kind of odd, though. Right, so Billy Idol. Oh yeah, by the way, the other addition to this game is you have a jetpack, which just one more Zelda-ism too, is like you can kind of get yourself out of a fall. There's a lot of
is that a Zelda-ism or is it an anthemism?
I don't, I mean, which game?
Yeah,
the notion of a
close
jetpack
the
in a
Anthem
game is
server
not.
so we can play Anthem.
It's an ultimate play the game reference because it's the jetpack for the ZX Spectrum.
I had to play that for Donkey Kong 64. I understand.
I like jetpack. Jetpack's okay. Yeah, like, so there's a lot of verticality in this game. It doesn't give you a lot of like lateral movement speed, but in terms of like getting up and climbing, it's surprisingly useful. It doesn't run very long is the main issue, and leveling. Would you be shocked to hear in order to improve your jetpack, you have to put in a lot of skill points to the like make technology better line? Yeah, so I did not do that. But the Bastion is, let's say, in like, bottom center of the map. In hockey, they would call it the 5-hole. And just north of there, on the top of there's like a ravine, and then on the other cliff side, there's like a little amphitheater, and like that is where the quest icon for like go see Billy Idol is. So I went over there, and I take the first step into like the relative vicinity of this amphitheater, and next frame, hard cut to black, and then fades in and plays a 5-minute-ish, maybe not 5 minutes. I'm going to say 4 minutes, though, for sure. 3D movie maker Billy Idol concert for a recent single called Whiskey and Pills by Billy Idol. This was not a motion capture performance of Billy Idol. This is a charming, as I said, it looks like it was made in like composer. The animation on it is charming in how rough it is. And the likeness, I'll say this, they didn't make him look 40 years younger than he is. That is like approximately like contemporary Billy Idol right now on that stage with a man pantomime playing guitar next to him the entire time, which is very weird. Doing like very good man is too old to be singing about this shit kind of rock stuff. It's amazing. As soon as this concludes, there are two guys standing outside, like like right off the stage, who are just talking back and forth, just being like, wow, it was awesome. Sure glad I got to see it. Yeah, that was really good. And that's it. You can't re-trigger it. You can't, like, it's just kind of done. It's gone from your quest inventory. It pops an associated achievement, and I think it gives you like 100 experience, which in the economy of experience in this game is like not bad. Nothing can top this. I took the disc out of the Xbox, and it's now just sitting behind me. Like, what does one say? I don't know how this game ends. I might look it up. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not particularly curious.
The way that game's plot goes and the things that happen to Elexon.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, we've got the Ed Furlong of the series is like right there. Like, clearly, shit's gonna go on with this child, right? Can we talk about Ed Furlong? No, everyone gets
you really like that album by him. You won't stop talking about that album by Ed Furlong.
I can't. There's a cover of People Are Strange on there that's also a terrible cover. It's fucking spectacular.
Braden, work of art, Braden. I mean, Jeff.
I can't help but be kind of impressed by this game. Like, to be honest, like I didn't really enjoy my time with it at any point, but okay, that's not fair. Like just kind of exploring a large new map that I've never seen and seeing their again, a lot of people working in second language doing spoken dialogue in English with like Xbox 360 models standing in 4K scale assets, basically, with just bizarre shadow glitches going on. Like there's a charm to this. It feels like something that it's amazing that this exists on the same platform that they're going to put like Starfield on, right? Like I like this in the sense that I like a lot of different kinds of video games for different people. That being said, it does seem like this has been a game not particularly well received by even the audience it was made for. And that seems to extend to Elex as well, like the original one.
Yes.
Like I feel like the odd, weird thing to say about that is what I've always gotten is the sense that Piranha Bytes' weird attempt to make their games more mainstream has not been received well by their own fans that got them to the point where they're at in terms of just like being a well-known name in Europe.
Yeah, like this is not. And the thing is, if they were going for, like, we wanted to make a more approachable game, I don't really know if Elex 2 is that either. Like, I wouldn't say it's a particularly... The thing is, it's not, like, difficult per se. It's, like, to boil it all the way down, it's just very grindy. Like, to make forward progress in these games, you need to commit a fair amount of sweat equity, which has been the case the entire time. So to, like, say Elex is bad because it does that is like, well, you knew that going in, basically. Like if you are picking this up, you probably ought to know the sort of deviant shit that these people have been making for like 2 decades now. So I don't know if that's like a valid criticism, but I would, I'm gonna actually look up the how long to beat on both of those games. But if you told me they were 50 hours long, I'd believe you. If you told me they were 70, I'd believe you. Apparently, you can beat the first Elex game in 30 hours. The main story, main extra is 50, and then Elex 2, it looks like it's between like 40 and 60. That's a lot.
Just a reminder, it took me 21 hours to finish Gothic 1. I did look at a guide because there are some fiddly, esoteric bits in that game that maybe aren't shown to you very well. But you can... That game is of a reasonable length.
I mean, is it a reasonable length in part because technology is passing Piranha Bytes by and the games that they want to make are no longer possible, or
I would like to know.
I just think that their style of open world design, like with 30 people, these shorter micro games are the only thing that they are capable of making at this point. Because, again, I feel if you want to go the action role-playing game, fine, that's a crease for you. But this genre is passing you guys by. Like, the B-tier game is a dying breed for a reason, because, I hate to say it, like, the market for that stuff, unless you're going to sell it at a massive discount on Steam and GOG, market for that stuff is low.
Like, I think the best case scenario for something like that, a best case scenario, is you end up with something like Sable, basically, which, you know, that game has, to this day, like, weird technical problems, but it manages to have, like, a large explorable world with some, like, layers and density that you can, like, dig down into, and does a few of the, like, feature set things that a noted open world game, Breath of the Wild, did, but in, like, 10 hours, and also sold for, like, $20 or whatever when it came out. Like, taking, you know, frankly, just kind of pilfering good, interesting ideas from other places, and then making, you know, your bite-sized version of that. Like, an Elex game that is on a map that is, well, I'm going to say even like a quarter the size of the one they made. A, I think I'm kind of just describing Gothic 1. B, like, that might do okay now as opposed to what they did here.
Honestly, I feel like Piranha Bytes should just do a retro throwback. What do you think, Braden? In a post-Original Sin 2 world, like, there's a market for a traditional CRPG that's smaller and still a little rough on the edges.
Yeah, well, Original Sin 2 took me 90 hours. But
I'm just saying, like, they don't need to make these action RPGs where they
don't
clearly
need to make these games at the scale they're making them at. And I think
you don't
they
need
would
to make
benefit
these big open worlds. You can make something that takes place in a single environment.
Like,
Yeah,
I have no idea what they're doing. I would be very interested in, like, hearing some of the developers of these games kind of speak through their history.
So the Gothic remake is not them; it's a different team.
No, it's a different team, different studio owned by THQ Nordic of the 8,000 studios.
I went back to the reviews at the time, and, like, Gothic 1 placed second, it placed third on GameSpot behind Morrowind and Dungeon Seed as best RPG. And then I found Computer Games Magazine, where it placed behind Arcanum and Wizardry 8. Like, this game at the time,
it was a big deal, especially in Europe. Less so in the States, but in, like, especially, like, Germany and Poland, Gothic is revered.
Yeah. When I got my first PC for my own, like, use as a high schooler in 2004, and I remember very, very specifically trying to decide if I wanted to buy Morrowind or Gothic 2. And I remember, like, reading GameSpot reviews and other reviews at the time, trying to decide which one of those to get, because I knew it was going to be one of them. Like, both were very... I wound up getting Morrowind, like, surprise. But I can't see myself not having had, you know... There's a world where I became a Piranha Bytes sicko just by going down the aisle of the NEX on Pearl Harbor and getting Gothic instead of Morrowind, which is weird to think about. But I did not. And this has been a neat little exploration of this company overall. I can't sit here and say with, like, a smile on my face that, like, seems like they're trending in a good direction. But I think it's pretty impressive that a team that small even put out a game half the size of Elex 2. Like, I don't know, I like the moxie of this a lot. I think a remake of Gothic 1 sounds like kind of interesting. Like, that might drum up some business. And I'm curious to see what they do going forward. Like, it seems like they're at least still existing and probably still working on something. There's no news that's just like, yep, they just got shut because nothing doing.
No, they're working on something.
Yeah.
Apparently their next game will be out by 2025, which is a real year.
And say what you will about THQ Nordic and the Embracer Group, but I feel like they understand how to properly budget a mid-tier game.
Yeah, that's kind of been their crease, right? Like they own non-Ubisoft, non-CD Projekt Red. Pretty much everything else on mainland Europe is under that umbrella at this point, right? Like, I guess Embracer might be like, yeah, like it's them and Embracer, right? Like, and then you like
Embracer owns THQ Nordic.
Okay, so there's the stack there. I guess you got like Focus Home and 505, but those are probably owned by one of those somewhere in there. I don't know. It seems like they have gobbled up a lot of like Euro development over time. Making a lot of smaller like new games, and then a lot of like, here's this PlayStation 2 Xbox original like third person platformer you don't remember, and we made it HD. It's like, oh,
they're making Jagged Alliance 3, Jeff.
Legend of K. I've been so excited. Yay. Like, what?
They're on their we are on the 4th or 5th attempt at reviving Jagged Alliance this century.
I really don't want to think about it because it just makes me sad. Like, Jagged Alliance 2 is so good. Like,
just think about this, guys. I mean, THQ Nordic, they own Risen, they own Gothic, they own Sacred. They own the trifecta of German-made CRPGs.
Who's got Realms of Arcania? Where's that?
I think they do as well.
That's just it.
That might be Daedalus.
Oh. I'm going to keep talking.
Realms of Arcania rates.
Okay, wait. We got to decide how
we should play the Realms of Arcania remake. That thing seems terrible.
How are we going to rank this, considering that we all played a different assortment of video games?
I have a hot idea.
Yeah.
I trust Braden to put Gothic in the appropriate place.
Okay.
I don't. Because Braden has said some very scary things. You know what?
Saying
How
that
about
Gothic
this?
is a better game than Eternal Sonata.
Wait, shut up. I have a better idea. All right. So I feel comfortable. Let's just establish which games we're ranking. Clearly, we are going to rank Elex 2.
Yeah.
Do you want me to limit myself to just Risen 1? Or do you want to do Risen 1, 2, and 3? Let's go with Risen 1, because I think Braden also played some of Risen 1. Okay. So we'll do Risen 1, we'll do Elex 2, and we will do Gothic 1. Gentlemen, does that sound acceptable?
That seems fair. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with the worst. Let's start with Elex 2, reverse order in terms of release.
The list, by the way, is available at bit.ly/OTDE rank. That is OTDE rank. I will not be reading this because we're just burning now. I would like to set this game probably below Jade Empire.
Wait, could you do top 3, bottom 3 again?
Sure. Well, okay. I just said I wouldn't, but since you asked, the bottom 3, working down, number 36, Secret of the Stars. Number 37, Aiden Chronicles: The First Mage. Number 38, Unlimited Saga by Square. The top 3, in third place, you have Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Wilsermacht. In second place, Suikoden for the PlayStation. Maybe you've heard of it. And the best RPG of all time, Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, from New World Computing for the personal computer. What I'm suggesting is that Elex 2 belongs somewhere in the bottom 20s, the high 20s, where we have stuff like Jade Empire and the Super Spy, and Lord of the Rings Third Age, the GBA version.
I would say it goes below Jade Empire then of what you've said. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's too ambitious. I enjoyed playing it more than the Super Spy. Like it's just that simple. And the combat in this isn't particularly good, but it is better than that of the Super Spy.
All right. What about Risen?
I think that this starts at the line of mediocrity, and we decide, does it go up or down?
Okay.
So what is
or worse than Bahamut Lagoon, than Hybrid Heaven?
This is going to pain me to say it. I think it's worse than Hybrid Heaven.
I think you're wrong, but you're allowed to say that.
Wait, what's the argument in favor of Risen over Hybrid Heaven?
It's a real video game. It's got John Rhys Davies in it. Just like Lord of the Rings: The Third Age.
It has a lot more ambition than Hybrid Heaven,
Yeah.
and it's got an open world design and a more full-fledged RPG leveling system. If we put it above, what's above Hybrid Heaven?
Megami Tensei.
I'm not putting it above that. So this would go above Hybrid Heaven and not an inch more.
I'm fine with that. I think it can live above
Okay.
Hybrid Heaven. That is fair.
All right, Braden, pull out your knife.
All right. Yeah,
Pull
I'm
your gun
pulling out
out.
my knife. I attack for 1d4 points of damage plus my dexterity modifier. And I think the first Gothic is an actually good video game. And I think part of that has to do with context. I think that game's shortcomings are a lot more forgivable when you put it in the context of the other PC RPGs that were coming out around the same time. And I think by the time they get to Risen, I think that excuse goes away. I think, and also I genuinely think they maybe got a little worse at it. Like I would not be surprised if I play Gothic 2 and really enjoy it, which is my way of saying I think Gothic should be our new number 10. It should be above Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light.
God.
I don't think it's as good as Arcanum, another hot 2001 RPG, but I like that game a lot. I like the incrementalism. I like the part where you could just beat the shit out of people and mug them.
Would you say, so just above Fire Emblem, not above Ultima 4, make it the number 10?
Yes, the new number 10.
I take this pretty seriously because I know you don't love putting stuff above Fire Emblem unless it's really important.
Yeah, I like it more than the first Fire Emblem.
You know,
I think that's a reasonable place for this game.
Braden, I hate to say this. I think I might actually play Gothic 1 over Ultima 4.
I just think Ultima 4 is like important.
Oh man, it is.
And we can't put things above Ultima 4
unless they have a real good argument.
Except for the 8 things we already put up there. Because it's important, right. Capital I. Yeah,
you
but
don't
in this
get
case,
Gothic
I think,
without Ultima 4.
Yeah, like I think that's the issue specifically in this instance. Even if, Gothic winds up, once you patch it up, probably a more playable game for most people now than Ultima 4 is. Super Master System notwithstanding. I like that. That's where it's gonna go. I've decided. Thanks to both of you. It's the new number 10. It's a PC game. It was episode 35. It was put there by Fanta. We have a new top 10 entry, which is weird. The top 10 of this list looks different than it did slightly ago. It now runs, just going up the list, Gothic, Ultima 4, Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura, Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber, Quest Floor Glory 1, So You Want to Be a Hero, Grandia 2, Etrian Odyssey 4, Legend of the Titans, Xenosaga Episode 1, Derville Zermacht, Suikoden, and up the tippy top, still, probably for a very long time, Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven. A very good game. That's neat. That's Piranha Bytes. I hope those lovable Deutschland men continue to churn out games about 3 factions who you need to turn in letters for
the
foreseeable future. I hope they get the weird shadow renderer thing squared away, because that was weird.
I hope they get the trees fixed.
If you are from Germany and you disagree with these, please join the Patreon so you can yell at us. Even if you're not from Germany, join the Patreon so you can yell at us.
It's a beautiful language and we love to hear it. Well,
oh boy. So our next episode, huh? It's gonna be a
your
doozy.
Pick, Jeff, and I think we already know what it is.
So here's the thing. I have a pick, and it is going to come up, but I think the way that these episodes are going to roll out, I think the next thing that we're going to do is going to be more in line with a certain solar event that happens.
Oh, you're right.
Every 6 months or so, let's say.
You're right.
A certain sun-based thing.
Oh.
A certain alignment.
Uh-huh.
And a certain alignment of other Deep Listen's talent.
Of Kuso. Yeah.
Yeah. A very poopy event will be coming your way. And I will say the candidate game that we have had, we have pre-funked this one quite a bit. I don't know if it all the way matches.
I don't think it's bad enough to be Kuso.
No, but dubious.
I mean, listen, if you want to do some real shit, we can play Inquisitor. You guys want to play Inquisitor?
No, I want to push off my pick, which I've only been waiting to do for half a year now. Yeah. And we are going to get M. Palladino to show up on this show, and we are going to talk about Dragon Age 2.
Fantastic.
God damn it.
The one where you go into a cave.
You mean the best Dragon Age game by process of elimination?
Yeah, it's not the first one, and it's not Inquisition. That can only mean one thing. It's the tabletop RPG that they made, which is very good, I've heard. Yeah, it's Dragon Age 2. We're going to talk about that.
If you're joining us for the first time, I look forward to you hating Anders as much as the rest of us did when we first played this game.
I'm very excited to buy the DLC for this game I have through EA Play on my Xbox.
Oh yeah, that's right. I might not have.
It's apparently more
PC
or less mandatory.
Save data. What happens if you don't have a Dragon Age Origins save file when you play Dragon Age 2? Nothing really happens.
You can just pick an origin for the origins. Like you don't lose that much from not having an imported save file.
Okay.
Do I get my Isaac armor?
Oh,
that's it for this episode of Off the Deep End. Thank you, Germany. Tusen Talk. That's Norwegian. Thanks everyone who's been listening to this ship of fools. We are happy that you have been here. If you like what we did, you can pay us. And if you don't like what you did, you can pay us to go away. You pay us to go away by going to patreon.com/deeplistens and kicking in any dollar amount with the tag "go away." And we will definitely look at and read that and take it under advisement. As mentioned, dollar amounts at the $3 or higher will let you pitch an RPG that we will put in the slush pile and potentially draw from if the random atmospheric noise generator on random.org decides it. That is how it works. Special shout outs to SuperSex420. That artist provided us with a song called Halfway. You can hear it probably right now. Other tracks from SuperSex420 are up on bandcamp.com. Just search for SuperSex420. See you guys next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, particularly these, because they're a little grindy, and
there's no such thing as not kiting in a Piranha Bytes game.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Nisqually or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.